Good afternoon. Once again, it is my privilege and pleasure to come and spend these few moments of your time. Tuning in to the, shall we call it, the collective mind, often proves confusing because so often you are beginning to hear, we say, the jumble of many thoughts. How is it that one can sort through that and arrive at some semblance of the truth? So much noise in the background, so many difficulties to know what to follow. So shall we begin a conversation?
Yes. Thanks for being with us to have a conversation today. Today I'd like to chat a little about money. Money is one of those topics that we're all a little bit keen to learn more on because it gives us choices and represents freedom. But I'd like to sort of understand a little bit more about a human's desire for money, and I wondered if you could sort of enlighten us around that.
Shall we talk, shall we say, about the economy, because money is simply a storage factor, an item that can be exchanged for goods, for services, for many different things. So one wants to accumulate a storage fund of money. However, like all things, money is a current. It is a flow of options, and when one dams up, shall we say, the river, then one can accumulate the power behind the dam. As you already understand, that will flow and can be turned into, shall we say, electricity and so forth. However, if you hold back the flow without end, the dam will fill up and overflow. More so than that, the overflowing of the dam will weaken its structure, and eventually the whole will fall apart and the current will begin to flow again. Do you understand then? Money is such a factor. If one stores it and accumulates it in less and less places, then you will create a poverty, shall we say, a lack of it flowing, and as such it is no longer worth anything. It cannot any longer be exchanged. It is not an acceptable, shall we say, commodity. Does that follow? So, shall we say, then what occurs in human nature is another commodity takes over, and so you begin to trade in other options, shall we say, and this has been tried. Let us say, first of all, you had the money, the almighty dollar. and it was stored and removed from its currency. And so someone begins to set up an alternative. The alternative, shall we say, is the coin. That is the digital coin. And that becomes the new currency. And that, in its turn, becomes, shall we say, forever collected. And as such, a new currency again will come into being. You understand, you cannot stop the flow of human desire for items. Does that make some sort of sense?
Yeah, so what you're saying is that whether it's the dollar or whether it's what you said, the coin, I'm assuming we're talking about cryptocurrencies.
Of course.
It's stored and backed up, and because they have no flow, are they destined then to be replaced?
Of course, because the point of money is exchange. The point of money is to, shall we say, lubricate trading. That is, somebody wants to, shall we say, offer their time and energy, that is to work, for food and clothing and accommodation. Do you understand? Somebody has to guarantee that. So you use the money as an alternative supply. But when the money is held in certain reserves, then it becomes, shall we say, it unbalances the notion of trade. So an alternative has to be found. So shall we put it this way? At the present time, your cryptocurrencies, as you call them, are still reliant on dollars. They're still reliant on that. But that will not continue, of course, because the very foundations are what it was attempting to replace. Do you follow? So it is more that someone has to guarantee a certain flow. Does that make sense? If you have, shall we say, a central organization that guarantees the flow of your cryptocurrency, then, of course, all the national currencies fade away. You cannot maintain them, and as such, you can no longer maintain your government controls and so forth. Society is in transition. You understand, at a certain point, it will transcend or decay. All things either shall we say, expand, that is, they grow and transcend, or they break down and die out. Many examples over thousands, shall we say, millenniums of years, that has always been the case.
So if we have a central organisation that will then guarantee the flow of the currency when it comes to digital currency, is this a critical factor that will allow us to break away from the current powers?
Shall we say, if the currency is not accumulable, That is, one doesn't have banking systems and one doesn't accumulate it. It is a trading material only. Then, of course, one causes balance. That is, shall we say, if one purchases, that is, by time, a certain amount, then one can spend that in whatever way, as long as it is not accumulable. That is, one cannot store it. So you are not having an account as such, only in what you have put into it. Does that make some sort of sense?
So essentially you're trading your time, your services, for an immediate benefit, which could be someone else's time and services.
Of course. And if you are storing it as time and service, shall we say, then greed mechanisms, that is, everything becomes, shall we say, open and honest, which of course the point of all such accumulation storage is to hide from everyone else what one is doing. So it is a dishonest system. And of course, in the past, that has been always the case from the failing of the last species, as it were. As we have spoken in the last of the root races, you understand, collapsed because of that need to own and to separate out. We have spoken of this. So you are accumulating what is beyond your ability to make use of. You are storing and therefore causing the social interactions to fail. And it is only beginning to be understood that what you cannot use is in fact poisonous.
How so?
Shall we say it poisons the system, and of course it poisons one's own ability to create.
So
understand?
The billionaires of the world that are hoarding and holding on to so much wealth and creating so much inequality, are you saying that what they're not using is becoming poisonous to them?
Of course, and to society. And that is why so many of them are looking on how to give it away again in ways that are beneficial for the system itself to continue. Otherwise, it will not. So many of them already have seen that it cannot continue in that fashion, and that the only solution is to use it. In other words, if you have billions of dollars, then spend it, because it is pointless to keep hold of it. So you spend it in whatever way is possible to keep it moving in ways that, shall we say, balance the inequality. Shall we say, buying more super yachts. So you have hundreds of, shall we say, useless super yachts is not spending it, it is accumulating super yachts. You understand? One has to put it back into the currency. As you understand, the dam, shall we say, as our example, will produce electricity on a continuous basis if the water is allowed to flow. You are controlling the flow, of course, but you are producing something of equal, if not more value. You understand, a thing, this is a natural law, a thing can never be created nor destroyed, only transformed. So if you want to hold it in a place, it will naturally transform, whether that is into something of positive value or destructive value. And so much of your world has, and your money system has been translated, transformed into destructive notions that have caused, shall we say, millions of damage, with the idea that you can make more rebuilding the damage. What nonsense. And that is only to show that not only has humankind not fulfilled its prophecy, its principles and its ethics of do no harm. So all over the world, disruption is caused simply from this mechanism. But let us go back to the original question, which is, what is it that you wish to create? So often people are looking towards the law of attraction to attract large amounts of money. But of course, that is not what they really want. So many really want, shall we say, a house that is livable. Do you need a house that is so big it is unlivable? Do you need a house that is impossible to clean? Of course you could keep building bigger and bigger and bigger, more and more, but it would be also unnecessary and accumulation. You follow what I'm getting at. So if you want to create something, why not go directly? Why not be clear about what it is that you need, that you want to bring into your life, and you have purpose beyond accumulation? You understand, you want to have a house that is able and is, shall we say, comfortable, that has enough space for yourself and your children. Do you follow? Then that is where you put your attention. The money is irrelevant. It is only a mechanism of transaction. Does this make some sort of sense?
Yeah, so instead of asking for a six-figure income, focusing on what you really want to spend that money on, so whether it's a nicer car or a house or...
Of course. And what happens is, of course, you are attracting that in once you have, say, engaged with not just what you want, but shall we say the purpose behind it. What is it that is in alignment with the total? You follow? The idea is one can create reality that is, can bring from the creative world, that is from the world of blueprints, into the physical reality without affecting the whole. If it is going to affect the whole of reality, then it will interface with everyone else's desires. Then you are in conflict because somebody else has already, shall we say, put their attention on the very spot where you want to build your swimming pool. Do you follow? They want to put their caravan. Do you follow? So you are in conflict. It is not a unified field that the physical world has to interact with. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So it is important that you have, shall we say, right, a certain quality, shall we say, of agreement with the collective. In other words, shall we say, the universe flows in a certain direction. It is either, as we point out, transcending, or it is dying off and moving into confusion. When it transcends, all things are in alignment. In other words, everyone has their needs met. If it moves into conflict and confusion and differences and so forth, then it will move in the opposite direction. And that is where you arrive at two universes separating out. Does this make some sort of sense?
That seems clear.
So when you are trying to create, shall we say, by applying the law of attraction, you will find inside of that is a certain sense of harmony. That is, you are in harmony with the universe. And once that occurs, you will see the law of attraction taking place in front of your eyes. If it is not taking place, then there is a disharmony somewhere in the system. You are asking for something, shall we say, that is damaging to another. Do you follow what I mean?
Yeah, this is where you're referring to us moving towards the fifth dimension.
Of course, and I want to put it this way, because, shall we say, those that have accumulated large amounts of wealth have already put into the field, as it were, not to share that with others, then of course you want something, you are in conflict with that principle. So you understand, until you begin to unify, your law of attraction has instabilities in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because with conflict, then you cannot create.
That is, of course, the case. So if you are looking for something that does not interfere with another, then your ability to attract that in becomes more energized. You are more attractive. You understand, you are not wasting your energy looking at what might get in the way. You are not clearing, shall we say, a space for that to occur.
And this is what's happening already now in terms of
course.
The law of attraction. If we are not creating, say if we're trying so hard to create something and we're wondering why it's not happening, would it essentially be because there is conflict with another?
Of course. And that one then has to look at self. One has to look at the reflections that are really coming back. You understand, if you are applying the law of attraction, then what comes into being is the law of attraction. If you are in conflict, then you will find conflict.
Yeah.
If you are, shall we say, undeserving, you will find statements from the universe of undeserving. So everything remains in balance. There is not a moment when it is not in balance. But being in balance does not mean it is in comfort. You understand? You can get, shall we say, a scale and put a large amount on one side of the pen and the same amount on the other side, and the whole scale will collapse. Do you understand? It is in balance, of course, the same amounts, but the very structure is incapable of supporting that.
So is there, when we talk about conflict, is there any conflict between spirituality and having a lot of money, or is it a personal thing per individual?
The problem, and it has always been stated, is it spiritual to need money? Do you understand? Or is it spiritual to create one's reality without it? You understand? For example, let us say I want a new car and I want a bigger vehicle because I have my followers here who want to come on on a trip, shall we say, in order to speak my mind. Yeah? You understand? So here you are, you need the vehicle and you are struggling to find the money. And then someone comes and says, here, I have this vehicle, you have it. I have no need for it in the present time. Use it. You understand? No money has changed hands. The vehicle that one wanted for a specific period of time is made available. One does not own it, of course, but who needed it only for this period of time? And then at the end of that, you need a different vehicle, and someone else comes along and says, I hear you need this vehicle, here it is. Have it as long as you like. You understand? Nothing needs to be money. So is it spiritual to desire money? You understand? Is it spiritual to want a bank account with a large amount of money in it?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Does it clarify?
Yeah, it's not about ownership. It's really about what you need the money for.
Let us say this. It is whether you are in harmony with the source.
Yeah.
If one is in the spirit, you understand, with the divine flow, the divine will take care of everything. It is not necessary then to descend to the lower reaches and identify with this mechanism of trade. It is not a thing. Money is only pieces of plastic or paper or whatever, coins. You understand? It is not anything.
Yeah.
Even when it is the gold, it is not anything. It is a piece of metal. You understand? All of this. Let us take an example. Let us say that from now on you are going to trade in masterpieces of art. So you have a famous artist and you take your picture down to the market and exchange it. Do you follow? Just as good as the money, not perhaps as versatile. You have to find somebody who wants to offer you something for your piece of art.
So in terms of the potential new currency that's time and service based, having a...
I am not saying there is going to be such agreement. There is no need for that in your age. You understand, you want something and it is registered. You can register your desire and it can be, shall we say, banked against what you have to offer. Let us say you have some furniture you no longer need, so you put that and someone wants that, and so it accumulates and it is a system that has no interest, no added for transacting. Do you understand? Nobody is doing anything except marking. That is collecting what is value.
You're saying no compounding interest.
Let us just say it is numbers of value. Let us create a new currency called 1 unit of value. And for 1 hour of your work, you will get 1 unit of value. So, shall we say, in normal terms, 1 unit of value for 1 year's work will buy, shall we say, 1 vehicle. So we will have a larger unit, 1 unit of vehicle value. Do you understand? You can make it anything you like. And that is then becomes universal. And in the process of that, society must come to agreements of personal value. Is somebody more valuable than another person? And that then is the spiritual question.
Fantastic. Thank you. All good reminders and some new things there. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we wrap it up today?
I think that is enough. You understand, because human consciousness is, shall we call it, at the transitional space. Some people will recognize what I am saying, and some people will dismiss what I am saying. Of course, because some people already have accumulated material, shall we say, in the old system. And they are already more wealthy than some other person. Why would they want to give anything to someone else in order to create balance? Because the imbalance system is good for them. And that thinking, of course, holds one into the physical identity of the old system that eventually must self-destruct. So it is fine. It is not a problem for anyone who wishes to go in that direction. Everything for their own. You understand, if someone wants to live in a world of inequality, then that is their right. If someone wants to live in a world of equality, then that is also their right. And the point is that when enough consciousness accumulates at that degree, shall we say, the two universes separate out. They cannot occupy the same space. Enough for today.
Yes, thank you very much for your time.
And thank you. And once again, the questions are so valuable. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you.